Well, councillors and officers, good evening to you. I will do a quick welcome and announcements. Good evening, welcome to this meeting of the Licensing Committee, Wednesday the 6th of November. I'm Councillor Dave Harris. I'm a councillor for Beerchurch Ward and I'll be chairing the meeting this evening. I'm going to make a few general housekeeping announcements, but one sentence I want to say at the start. You must have all read about the taxi driver that got injured, costed at his course of his duties. I just wanted to put it on record from this committee, from myself, not for debate, but to thoughts go out with him and the family to hope he recovers very quickly. So I thought it was important to say that. So to begin with, action in the event of emergency. There are no practice alarms planned for this evening. So if an alarm does sound, please evacuate the town hall by going down the main staircase or the back staircase to the High Street and then to the car park behind the town hall in Rumwell Street. This meeting is being recorded for live broadcast over the internet via the council's YouTube channel and will also be available to view afterwards. Please, would speakers always use microphones at all times and speak directly into the microphone, as this activates the audio recording. Members of the committee will and may use electronic devices to access their meeting papers, and visitors are welcome to use mobile phones and other devices, including cameras, but please use them discreetly. Set them to silent and do not use voice or camera function. The provisions in the Constitution around the timing of breaks will apply to this meeting, and we will take a break at 19:30 depending on the items of business remaining. And on the subject of Constitution, normally have your say has to be pre-recorded and given a certain notice. That notice has not been given tonight, but I've allowed a speaker to speak on item 7 because I thought that you'd wish me to do that. So there are toilets on every floor in the building and an induction loop in this room. Introductions. I will now ask members of the committee and attending officers to introduce themselves, starting on my left.
Councillor Simon Appleton, Highwoods Ward.
Paul Donachie, Licensing, Community Safety and Safeguarding Manager.
Sarah White, Licensing Team Leader.
Alison Chapman, Licensing Officer.
Karen Booth, Licensing Officer.
Catherine Spindler, Saints Ward.
Kemal Tufolo for Castle Ward.
Councillor Mick Spindler, Shrub End Ward.
Roger Buston, Pretty Gate.
Councillor Jeremy Hagan, Stanway Ward.
Councillor Carl Powling, Mersey and Pyfleet Ward.
Councillor Claire Osborne, Shrub End Ward.
Matthew Evans, Democratic Services Officer.
Thank you very much, members and officers. Item 2, substitutions. I have apologies received from Councillor Roger Mannion.
Yeah. And Councillor Lockyer Akinyemi has just emailed in as well. She can't make it tonight.
Thank you very much. So there's 2 apologies. They will be in the minutes. Thank you very much. Item 3 on your agenda is urgent items. Well, I can declare to you there are no urgent items. Item 4, declarations of any interest. And I'll now invite councillors to publicly announce item number and whether the interest is disclosable or otherwise, and the nature of the interest. Any declarations of interest, please? No, thank you very much. So item 5, I invite the committee to confirm as a correct record the minutes of the Licensing Committee held on the 2nd of October 2024. Anybody to propose? Thank you very much. Councillor Hagan and Councillor Powley. Thank you very much. All in favour? Thank you so much. Item 6, have your say. We have no genuine have your say, but as I said at the start of this meeting, we've got 1 speaker on item 7. So item 7 now, the committee is asked to consider a report, which no doubt you've read, requesting it approved for the purposes of public consultation and amendment to the council's Hackney carriage and private hire licensing policy. I invite Paul Donaghy, Licensing, Community Safety and Safeguarding Manager, to present the report.
Thank you, Chair. The report relates to the current policy with regards to the engine requirements on emissions within the current fleet. So we would like you as a committee to consider a public consultation before presentation to full council, with consideration of the temporary suspension of that requirement for all licensed hackney carriages and private hire vehicles to meet the Euro Cap 4, which is for petrol, and the Euro Cap 6, which is for diesel, emission standards as contained within the current policy, although that will be retained within the new policy. It is recommended that you agree for the public consultation prior to referral that Section 6.3 of the Council's Hackney Carriage and Private Hire Licensing Policy be suspended until the 1st of January 2026 or until such other date as you deem appropriate. And the reason for that recommended decision is to allow the current taxi fleet, which is in breach of the standards, to continue to operate a service to the people of Colchester whilst having an appropriate period to replace the vehicles operating in breach of the policy. The alternative option is to not recommend such a suspension or the full council review, and for the enforcement of the policy to be undertaken immediately. The details are as follows. On the 24th of March this year, the council approved the removal of age restrictions on licensed vehicles and confirmed the use of the testing regime and Euro emission standards to determine the continuing suitability of a vehicle to be licensed. That was also approved by full council on the 17th of July. As I've stated, Euro Cap 4 and Euro Cap 6 for petrol and diesel, which are the current ULEZ requirements, and it's easy to check. You simply do an ULEZ checker online and it will show you whether your vehicle complies. There was a further requirement, or is currently a further requirement, for all new registrations in 2025 to meet the LPG low emission or electric hybrid standard. We are currently reviewing and streamlining the entire policy. However, those standards matching ULEZ requirements will be subject to staying, contrary to with your approval. However, the final requirement relating to LPG low emission or electric hybrid standard is no longer relevant due to the change of government requirements and would be removed. It has come to the Council's attention that a substantial number of licensed vehicles are not compliant and could be removed from operating immediately. A sample test that we did so far, and we haven't gone through every single vehicle, suggests anywhere between 120 and 150 vehicles would be taken, if necessary, could be taken off the streets tomorrow. However, in order to address the situation and provide sufficient time for those affected to change to compliant vehicles, it's intended that the start date for enforcement will be the 1st of January 2026. After this date, vehicles will be required to meet the emission standards. One of the questions we would like to answered by the committee is whether you could consider, if you wish, all vehicles to be compliant from that date, or whether vehicles renewing from the 1st of January 2026 onwards would have until their next renewal date to be compliant. The current policy was agreed by full council following public consultation, and as such, the committee, if minded to recommend a suspension, will also be asked to consider the consultation and full council review. And an excerpt of the policy which contains provision under discussion was attached to the report at Appendix 1. The consultation would be a 6-week consultation on the change. Well, that's our proposal, due to the taxi policy being a policy agreed by the full council. The removal of the age restrictions on licensed vehicles was the subject of consultation between the 23rd of January and the 4th of March 2024. And the emissions and testing regime were set out in that consultation. So it has already been aired once. The majority of those that responded to the consultation were in favour of the removal of the age restriction on licensed vehicles, subject to the maintenance of vehicle emissions and testing standards. The strategic plan references, we have links to the Council Strategic Plan of 23 to 26, which includes the priorities of responding to the climate emergency, to make our city a better place in which to live and work and visit, The publicity considerations. The council will conduct the necessary consultation and contact the trade directly on the proposed changes and advise them on the steps they would need to take. There are no financial implications for the council associated with this policy, as the cost of vehicle inspections is borne by the vehicle owners. The environmental and sustainability implications. The council policy currently sets emission limits for its licensed vehicles with the intention of improving air quality over time, and these will remain pending a full review as part of the wider review of the policy to ensure the council's policy reflects the current science and targets emissions and air quality. The council's vehicle testing regime will continue, and it is therefore anticipated that the proposed change will have no detrimental effect. Those vehicles have been driving for a number of years. The council's 2030 climate emergency response target monitors our directed emissions, Scope 1 emissions and Scope 2 emissions indirectly created by people working for or with the council to provide us with goods and services. However, as neither of these apply, this would not affect our own targets, as vehicle emissions from third-party owned vehicles are outside the scope of the 2030 target. This extension does not change the situation. There are no community safety, health and well-being, health and safety, risk management, nor equality, diversity and human rights implications that we are aware of at this time. That's the report.
Thank you very much, Mr Donnelly, and a very full explanation there. Well, before I bring members in, I've got a speaker, as has already said. Mustafa, would you like to come forward? You'll push the button. You'll have 2 minutes, and then a bell will go, and you'll have a further minute after that, so you've got 3 minutes in total. We're very interested to hear what you've got to say. Thank you. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, sir. My name is Mustafa Irshad. I'm the Secretary of Hackney Carriage Association. I'm here to just point out 4 concerns. Thank you for your wishes for the driver who was injured. The first point, which is really important, we have been mentioned many times to the licensing committee regarding the marshals on the high street. Before Trilogy was taken over, means it used to be Liquid, I think so, if I'm not sure, Liquid, yes. Marshals were working really fine, but as Trilogy was taken over, so now we are suffering with the guards or marshals on the high street. Initially, yes, when we spoke to Mr. Paul, yes, they took some action, and initially they were down there, but for the last 4 or 5 weeks, I haven't seen over there. I would say that, especially for the public, when they are really drunk, definitely if they are not in the queue and the passengers or the customers are jumping here and there, because we have to follow the queue for the taxi. So what happened normally, we just send to the customer, go to the first one, no, come to the second one, go to the first one. So due to queue, definitely they are already drunk, so when they are jumping here and there, definitely they are more frustrated, and this could lead to that incident what happened already recently and once before as well. So I would say that if you take some strict action, then I think so it's a licensing condition for Trilogy, but they are not fulfilling their licensing condition. So I would request you, if you reconsider this with them and ask them, this is one of the main thing for public safety anyway. Second, as you know that there was an issue over there, we would like to say that if it is possible, on the taxi rank we could have a CCTV cameras, if it is possible, just to cover the area. The third is there is a Remembrance Day on this 11th, so the rank will be closed from Saturday 6 p.m. till 1 p.m. on Sunday. I would like to request you on the behalf of the driver, if you can extend the time, instead of 6 p.m. can you make it to 12 or 1 p.m. so we can work? Otherwise, if it is shut, we cannot park here. I know I have received that we can park on the North Hill, but still that's night we need to work. Okay, that's all for today.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your submission.
Thanks for your
Thank
time.
you.
Cheers.
If you turn the button off, would you be able to respond to that, Mr. Solomon?
Certainly, Chair. We are aware of the trilogy issue and conversations have been had, and I'm going to look at Karen because I'm fairly certain today I read a email that states there is a meeting with the manager scheduled. Is that correct?
That's right, Paul, thank you. Yeah, so appreciate what you're saying about the marshals on the rank. It is a licence condition for Trilogy and we are picking up the matter. The difficulty is we can't rely on that as a town be the cover for the rank because their door staff do get pulled away to other issues, which obviously then makes them in breach of that licence. So what we will do is we'll pick up with the Business Improvement District to see if there's any resource that they can provide, particularly for busy times of year, to put marshals on there more permanently Friday and Saturday nights. Appreciate what you're saying, it makes it difficult, and we will pick up the matter and hope to improve it. Okay?
Okay, thank you very much, Karen.
CCTV, there is CCTV that covers the rank. It is obviously controllable by the CCTV centre, and obviously they will direct it as is necessary for the safety of the town centre. So what I will do is obviously highlight your concerns and ask them to, where possible, make sure one is centred on there if it's not being used for potentially a live incident or somewhere that requires further details. You're going to have to excuse me, I've got a head full of cotton wool. Remembrance Day.
Yes.
The issue with Remembrance, well, there's no issue with Remembrance Sunday whatsoever. Amazing. But the security implications are the responsibility of Essex Police and other partners. And if they feel it's necessary to seal an area early to conduct the necessary counter-terrorism sweeps, secure bins and whatever else they need to do, we can ask them, but I would imagine their plan is set to a certain timetable. I can certainly reach out to my police colleague, the inspector for the city centre. However, obviously, if they have long-standing plans relating to their counter-terrorism tactical advisors that specify certain search regimes, it will be highly unlikely that they will move their closures and opening times. But if I don't ask, I won't get.
Satisfied? Thank you. Just a word from me, if you've got issues like that in future, by all means email the licensing team, you'll get the answer very quick as well. So, so with members now, I've got a list of questions from Councillor Kamal, and I've also got Carl Powling indicated, but did you want to?
Yeah, Councillor Kamal, sadly, obviously, the email that you sent is very in-depth and came through to us at 16:21, where we were on the road to get here. So, with the greatest respect, there's no way we can answer those questions with the accuracy and depth that you would deserve. So what we will do, if it's okay with you and the chair, is we will respond with a written response, and we will share that with the committee, if you're happy. Purely because there's a number of points, and excuse me, and there's no point me cherry picking and not having exact figures, because A, that makes me look unprofessional, and two, if I'm wrong, it then makes me look like I've lied. So we will write to you with a detailed response to the points that we can answer.
Except to say the detail you asked for the numbers, and you've had that tonight, 120 to 150, that gives you an indication out of how many, Paul? 1,000? 800 and something?
I don't think as many as that, actually. I want to say just under 700.
Okay. So 120 out of 150 out of the 700. Okay. Does that satisfy you, Kamal?
Yes, Chair, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Councillor Powling.
Thank you. I'd like to thank the officers for the report as well. So the question asking is that what the report is saying is you'd like to do a consultation as from the 24th of January next year for 6 weeks.
Sorry, Councillor, the consultation will start as soon as you approve, well, not as soon as you approve it, because we've got to write it and get it out, but we're not waiting for that. The timeline is very much along the lines of we get it out ASAP, we bring the results of the consultation back to your meeting on the 24th of January, which would give you time to respond and decide whether or not you're sending it to full committee, which I believe is sitting in February. Mr Evans is going to nod. Yes. That's the timeline, sorry.
Okay, so the consultation goes out, but then you're looking at a sort of a dispensation for the drivers until the 1st of January 2026. And one of the other things is that until 2026, then from the 1st of January 2026, to renew their licence, they've still got possibly until the 1st of January 2027 to be fully compliant. That's what the suggestion possibly is?
Basically, that's why we passed the question to your good selves, because we don't want the responsibility. But the bottom line is you could turn around as a committee and say, if this gets approval in February by full council, everybody has a full 10 months to make sure that by the 1st of January, their vehicle is up to code. It is then also within your gift to turn around and say, if anybody is renewing from the 2nd of January 2025 up until the 31st of December 2025, they're going to be able to take some of that period into 2026 because they'll have a 12-month period. So somebody is going to lose out on timeline. There's no two ways about it, because unless we turn around and go, you will all be compliant from day Ed, someone is going to have some more time on their current licence than others. And that is one of the questions for the committee. Do we have a blanket that every vehicle that is on the road in Colchester licensed is compliant by the 1st of January 2026? Or are some people lucky enough, depending on when they renew for the current 2025 year, that they will then get an extra 11 months? And that's why it's a decision very much that it's not for me to make. And of course, the other option is, of course, the committee decide not to extend that option, or to not offer that option, or to simply not do anything except follow the current policy, in which case we would need to then start taking enforcement action. And that can be from any start date that was decided.
Okay, I think your proposals in there did seem, it gives everyone a fair chance to literally, because the cars are quite expensive, I believe, aren't they, for that? So, and it seems very fair, that option you put on, actually. Thank you. Thanks for the report.
Thank you. Yeah, the reason we extended the age of first licence issue for vehicles over 5 years was because the trade was suffering, because we were expecting them to buy newer, more expensive cars, even though there were extensive numbers of vehicles that were older than 5 years that were in immaculate condition that could be used by the trade. Obviously, so the committee agreed that that would be allowed, went through public consultation, but as I've said, the emission standards always remained the same. We just allowed the trade that flexibility to have older vehicles from day one. And obviously the question of why was this not enforced, etc., because it often comes up, is ultimately these issues have been picked up due to us reviewing the entire policy. It's a team of 3 of the most hardworking individuals, and they can't cover everything. So quite basically, if anybody wants to point the finger at sort of us missing something, then that comes through me.
Satisfied, Councillor Powley?
I hear what everyone has to say. I'm quite happy to make a proposal later.
Okay, Councillor Buston I've got next, and Councillor Hagan.
Thank you very much, Chair. Really, last item first, really, because that's almost the. All right, inspire. Give him some sweets. The last item first, really, because it's fresh in our minds. These things do come up from time to time, and they're a little bit of a lacuna in the process, but they've got to be addressed. And when they do come up, I think it is a good thing that officers take and advise the committee that we should try and be as flexible as we can be in getting to the eventual goal that we all know we need to achieve. Because although it is not our role as a committee to be the trade union for the trade and to make sure they, don't have to have any difficulties or hardships in undertaking their business. Nonetheless, it is important to us that the trade thrives and does well in our town, because it is actually a key part of the makeup and the oil, if you like, that goes in the wheels of our town, keeping it going, keeping people moving about. And we prefer people to use cabs than their own private cars, if we can. Now, that being the case, we do need to get to a certain position, and we need to agree that we're going to get to that certain position as quickly as we can, at the same time being flexible. My suggestion would be that for the 120 to 150 folk who have licences for vehicles that are currently not compliant, we ask them to individually contact us either by email or writing to say what their proposals are and their own roadmap to getting to compliance by the date that is mooted, which is the 1st of January 2026, which I think is a very fair offering. We're giving 13 months grace. Nonetheless, we are aware that it is going to cost people some money. We are aware of that. We can't get over that, we can't get around it, but nonetheless, if we can assist people at least to organise themselves in such a way that they know they're going to do it, we'll avoid a number of things, notable amongst which is in December 2025, 120 to 150 people coming along saying, oh, we didn't know about that, which would be, if I say unfair, well, it wouldn't be unfair because it's been out there for a long time and people do know about it. This is not something we made up overnight. So as part of the consultation, I would like to see an exercise conducted where we reach out to the 120 to 150 people by email or letter with the assistance of the association to ask them what their individual routes are towards achieving this target. And I suggest we take that as part of the consultation. If I can ask a question, am I allowed to ask the Speaker a general question? Am I allowed to do that?
Let's go.
Thank you.
Let's
Could
go
I
off
ask
piste.
you, obviously this will have been discussed and clearly it's been already looked at by 500 plus drivers. What is the association's general view about a proposal such as I've made? Can you sample that and can you let us know? Because what the association says and does is actually very important to how we formulate the direction of travel as a committee we wish to go. We want to take you with us. We don't want to say we'll do it by tomorrow, because although we could, that's not helping you, and ultimately that's not helping the town, is it? So do you think that would be fair? I think it would be, yes, please do.
Just a yes or no, just a quick one. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, sure. I would say thanks for taking us consideration. Yes, Mr. Paul's project is very good. I think so. Yes, if they send an email till that time, to all the drivers will be informed about this, that this legislation is going to be in. So
thank you. Well, while you're there, would I be permitted another question? While you're sitting there, Mustafa, we're all very sad to hear about what recently happened and this horrible injury that's been sustained. In the opinion of the association, can you also tell us whether or not you think that CCTV in taxis, which is another burning question, would have assisted?
Councillor Buston, I want to keep to item 7
All
if
right,
we
that's
can.
fine.
If that's
No,
okay.
it was just that he was there. I never otherwise get the chance to see him. But I think that would be useful information for us to have. You don't have to answer the question now, but I think that would assist us in our deliberations as to where we go in the future, if we can ask you that question. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Buston. if you could reply.
I was simply going to say to Councillor Buston, if it is okay with the gentleman, I will furnish you your contact email and you can ask the questions you wish to ask.
Thank you.
You happy with that? Before I give all, I know it's your work email, so it's not GDPR, but I don't like just to randomly. I have, yeah. I've got all sorts.
And bringing us back to item 7, Paul, the question that Councillor Buston asking about, as part of the consultation, asking them to mandate a date for when they intend to be compliant. What was your reaction to that, please?
I'm actually going to look hard left, have a quick conversation and come back to you.
Thank you.
So the issue with the consultation is obviously it's not a trade consultation, it's a public consultation. So that question would relate to an incredibly small number of people that would have access to the question. My initial view, and it will be something that we'll discuss and come back to Councillor Buston, because when this was raised in our previous conversations, I agreed that it would be great to have that roadmap and to understand who we've spoken to so they don't do the whole, oh, I don't know what you're talking about. But what we will also do, on top of the public consultation, is we will individually, as per our system, email every driver, re-highlight the emissions, re-highlight whatever dates you've agreed on, and explain that they need to check their ULEZ, check whether they comply or not, and confirm whether they comply or not, before we have to. And if they are not compliant, what they will do before the particular date to make sure they are compliant on that date. And there will be a fairly straightforward, no-nonsense message at the bottom that says if they have not complied by that particular date, sadly, my patience will not extend to more time because the committee will have made that decision and they will be, that vehicle will be off the road on that particular day.
Thank you, I think that's fair.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Buston. Next I have Councillor Hagan, and after I've got Councillor Kamal afterwards.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for coming along to speak tonight. Just a quick question for the officers, actually, regarding the sort of overall management of the conditions of the licence when it comes to the local, a nightclub down the road. It's part of their condition to put those wardens out there, I believe, to sort of manage that queue. How's that being managed from an officer's point of view? And I think that's something we can possibly come back to. So, Chair, perhaps we can put that on another agenda. And I think it's come up a couple of times, and I think we now need to perhaps look at a plan B on how we could potentially fund that. And I know you mentioned the bid, so that might be worth getting the bid down to have a chat with that. Secondly, regarding item 7, I think it's a good idea. I just think timelines are always wonderful things, aren't they? You get 12 months, yes, it's a long time. Actually, by the time it possibly gets through to full council for adoption and acceptance, I think that we could be well into the next year, bearing in mind the budget meetings that may not allow for this kind of decision anyhow. So I would only say that perhaps those timelines need to be looked at, and it might be worthwhile considering a 12-month from adoption at full council or at renewal, depending on the circumstances. So how that works out, I think that does need to be consideration. Ideally, the goal is a few years away yet, to 2030. So we do have time to mould and adapt and bring those drivers along. A financial commitment to buy a new vehicle, which is what a lot of these may have to do to become compliant. That's a big undertaking, especially during the cost of living crisis. We don't know how recent events are going to change incomes, and I'll leave it there because it's a non-political committee. But certainly, I do feel that we should be giving as much time as we can, but also not letting it run away. It is important that we do have that line in the sand, but making sure that we do provide a minimum amount of time. You say 12 months from today, it wouldn't necessarily be fair in my opinion. The other point I'd like to make is perhaps Uber, is that under the same guidance? I guess it might not, it is. So again, we need to be looking at that as well and making sure that everyone is contacted in a fair and equal way. And also we utilise the website for looking at the consultations, we're looking at email. But importantly, it's not too difficult to do a mail merge in Word, print them out and send them out through the post. And making sure that everyone who needs to be consulted is consulted and we get their feedback. And if you have the opportunity to, as Councillor Buston rightly said, let's ask them a question relating to the CCTV. It is important and that will feed into a future motion perhaps. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Kamar?
I mean, I will not go over all my questions, but I guess it will be still worth to make a comment and ask generic question. So, after reading Appendix 1 on encouraging environmental sustainability, I must express my disappointment and surprise to find out that Euro 5 diesel vehicles and Euro 4 for petrol had a deadline beginning from 2018, and Euro 6 for diesel vehicles and Euro 4 for petrol had a deadline beginning from 2020, and we are almost in 2025. And we are finding out that a substantial number of licensed vehicles are in breach of compliance dates and standards. Therefore, I guess when we are considering to whether extend the deadline for the compliance, it is important to ask some questions. For example, if we communicated former deadlines effectively and efficiently, they have the authority to consider issuing fines rather than postponing the deadline or revoking their licenses, or maybe consider a carbon offsetting arrangement. And if that is an option, then how much money could council will generate by issuing fines to businesses that failed to meet their 2018 and 2020 deadlines? And again, I guess another question that we can ask is, what are the lessons that we can learn? Yeah, and therefore one may ask, should license holders be given additional 11 months on top of 4 and 6 years that they already had? And when talking about 120 to 150 cars, I believe there is an environmental impact. The basis of my concern is that most of the taxi firms and the areas that they are sent by are primarily located within city centre and Castle Ward, and unfortunately the areas that have the highest and illegal levels of air pollution are again located in city centre and Castle Ward. And this is also recognized in Appendix 1, Section 6.4. It mentions that limits are designed for the protection of human health. Vulnerable groups are particularly at risk from the effects of air pollution. These include elderly adults, children, people with underlying heart and lung conditions or disease, and pregnant women. It's also worth mentioning that 6 days ago, UK government offered an undisclosed sum in compensation to Rosamond Adu Kisi-Debra for her daughter's untimely death due to air pollution. It is also a fact that air pollution and air pollution related illnesses are higher in neighborhoods where neighborhoods which have higher percentages of ethnic minority groups and poor infrastructure and working class families. Therefore, I guess we should be mindful of potential impacts on environment and public health and potentially legal issues that may arise too. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Cafu. I mean, you said, Paul, you're going to give a written answer. Any reaction to the words?
Yeah, well, sort of. So, obviously, with regards to public concern, that's why you have a public consultation, because ultimately the public will tell us what their fears are. And if they feel that what we're doing is unreasonable, this extension or otherwise, they will tell us. The actions between 2018 and 2022, certainly before my time, different management team, different officers team, we have no control. But what I would say is, when we talk about publicity of what's in the policy is published, it's on the website, and it is the requirement of every driver and every operator to know what they're signing up to when they renew every year, or whatever their renewal periods are. We have spent an awful lot of time, certainly prior to my arrival, there's been an awful lot of time spent hand-holding people who should perhaps take more responsibility for their own businesses. And I know that may be a little bit controversial, Chair, but we are a small team, streamlined under the current financial restrictions across all government services and council services, and we are no longer able to do the hand-holding and the nose-wiping required for people who simply could read what they're required to read. I have no disagreement whatsoever that we need to improve air quality. I have no disagreement whatsoever with any statistic that shows that certain areas are targeted. The town centre or the city centre will always have the highest levels because it has lorries, buses and all sorts going up, and vehicles going up and down it 24/7 as opposed to the residential areas. And that will obviously sway the figures. You would also remember that I think probably 2020 to 2022 with COVID would have had a massive impact on what was allowed, what enforcement was able to be carried out, all those sorts of things. So we are playing catch up. The committee will know that we have taken a lot of steps. We work closely with the Hackney Carriage Association. We speak to the operators very regularly, and we are trying to get there. What we don't want to do necessarily is turn around to 120 or 150 people who are basically feeding families, earning their lives, and before Christmas turn around and go, oh, by the way, you're no longer a taxi driver because your vehicle's off the road. Yes, I've got the authority. Yes, the policy gives me the power. Do I wish to wield it? Not at all. Until we go through whatever options the committee have voted on, and whatever the views are of the public, and whatever the views are of the full council. After that, if it's let the hammer fall, then I'll deal with it. But that's basically the original answer, the only answer I've got currently, Chair.
That's very fair. Thank you very much. Answered your question, yes? Thank you.
Yes, instead of revoking, maybe, can we not issue fines or carbon off-putting schemes?
No, we have no power to issue fines. We don't have that authority or that power under any of the legislation. And for carbon offsetting, I wouldn't even know which department we would have to be involving in things like those. We have enough problem making sure that every vehicle's correctly licensed and every driver's following the policies and that they're safe, that the public is safe. But we will get, and what I will say is, under whatever decisions are made by this committee and whatever's decided, we will get to a stage through zero tolerance from whatever date. We will have a fleet of vehicles on the road that are compliant, because if they're not compliant, they won't be on the road.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Buston, I think you indicated again.
I did, Chair, and craving your indulgence, if I may, for a second, I meant to bring up a further point from the Speaker, that the Speaker made, that I didn't get to at the time, in relation to the marshals in the High Street. It's an indirect point that triggered me to remember that, Paul, you were very kind to assist me in a matter relating to a resident of my ward, in a matter that loosely related to antisocial behaviour. What's occurring in the High Street is clearly a form of antisocial behaviour, and the purpose of my intervention here is just to flag up that it's becoming increasingly difficult, both for members, and if it's difficult for members to understand, it would be impossible for members of the public to understand, the various delineations between who is responsible for what areas of looking after antisocial behaviour or otherwise. Is it the police? Is it the council? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So we can't answer this question now, but perhaps with the hat that you currently wear, we could actually try and find a general definitive answer to that we can publish, so it therefore becomes simple and easy for people to understand where to go in relation to things of that nature. Because here we're looking around to see whether it was in the licensing conditions for the new club. And indeed it is, but where do we go from there? And that's, you know, that's a problem that I think is suffered generally. Thank you for allowing me to make that point.
Members? I don't know if you have any reaction to that, Paul, but any other members wish to speak?
I can give a very, because one of the three hats also covers ASB, community safety. ASB is a moving feast because what the public consider as ASB may generally be crime. So, for argument's sake, the trade, the supermarkets and the shops will say we are massive victims of antisocial behaviour, groups coming in the shop and stealing things. Well, if they're stealing things, it's theft, it's not antisocial behaviour. If somebody's running up and down the high street, they're drunk, they're kicking things over, then they're drunk and disorderly. It's a crime. It's the police's responsibility. And this is the difficulty. Yes, it is antisocial because the public don't want to see it. None of us want to see it. But is it a crime? And there is that constant issue of responsibility. And nobody's trying to duck it. I will tell you, the police aren't trying to duck it. We're not trying to duck it. We spend an awful lot of time in meetings about the PSPO and the wardens and the police and street drinkers and the ins and outs of everything. And sadly, the police don't have enough staff. We're not going to have council wardens out without, you know, police escorts at 4 o'clock in the morning, etc., etc. And what is low-level ASB going to be stamped out on a Friday or Saturday night? Possibly not. Should we try? Yes, of course, and we do. We speak to the licensed premises. It's their just because somebody leaves a pub doesn't necessarily make it not the responsibility of the club or the pub, because they've got a safeguarding responsibility for that incredibly inebriated person that they've been serving all night when they shouldn't have. But ultimately, it's not a one-size-fits-all. But we never stop trying to deal with ASB.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Any other councillors that want to? Councillor Perrin?
Can I make a proposal, Chair? Could I propose listening to the very points from Councillor Hagan and Kamal? It's important to get the pollution down, but also we don't want to make people that are trying to feed their families, because things are hard at the moment. I'd like to propose that we go ahead straight away with the consultation. For the cars to basically have till 2026 on the renewal, which you said, basically they got 2026 from their renewal, so the cars have to be fully compliant by 2027, which is a fair time, because it also gives time, like Councillor Hagan said, for the full council to make that decision, so it really is almost a 2 year. So could I make the proposal as consultation goes ahead, from the renewal of the licence in the 2026, they then have that final year to be fully compliant by 2027 would be my proposal.
Let's have a proposal on the table to go ahead with the consultation. Any seconders? Councillor Hagan, thank you very much. Members? All in favour? Thank you. Unanimous. Thank you very much. Thank you. Please do.
Chair, thanks. So can I just clarify then, for the purpose of the consultation, for any vehicle that is applied to be a new vehicle between now and 27, is there a view on whether they would need to comply with the standards, or are those standards suspended? So for new vehicles coming on, they would need to meet the ULEZ standards. Right, okay.
Yeah, we can't turn around and say, well, you can have a dodgy old runner for 2 years. to save yourself a few quid. I think we need to basically say, if you've got a car joining the fleet as of today, tomorrow, whenever, it is compliant as per the policy.
Yes?
I'd absolutely agree that this is basically, this proposal is for the people who've got their existing cars coming to the end of their life, which is 120, definitely not for new people to turn up and think they're going to get 2 years out of an old motor. Definitely, yeah, anything new must be fully compliant.
So we've just passed that, okay, so we're okay with that. It will go forward to consultation, you've already heard, as and when, as soon as possible. That will run for 6 weeks, it'll then come back to us, we will have time to consider it and go in more detail with it, and then it will go through to full council, as I understand it, from Democratic Services, so look for some further item on the agenda into the future, which will be January, I assume. Yeah, thank you very much. So we're past that.
Could I just ask for a point of clarification? So are we saying we're not going to ask drivers anymore to tell us what they propose to do?
No, they are.
Sorry, just so I've got it confirmed in my head, the way I've just
understood. It's a
understood.
bit woolly at the moment.
My head is about, yeah, somewhere up there in the clouds of rainbow
No, not
land.
your head.
No, but it is right up there. My understanding of what was just stated, and to give a clarification of the timeline, is we start a consultation now. That consultation result will come back to yourselves in January. We'll go to full committee in February. If full committee agree the suspension of the policy for the existing vehicles, any vehicle from that stage is basically able to continue. When they renew in 2026, that is their final 12 months, no matter what. So if they renewed on the 2nd of January 2026, they must be fully compliant by the 2nd of January 2027. If they renewed on the 5th of August 2026, they will be compliant by the 5th of August 2027, all the way up to the end of December. So, so we will not just have a sudden drop-off, we'll have a trickle of vehicles that must be compliant throughout 2027. We will still ask the question, because we'll know which vehicles that applies to. We will make sure, as I said, we will still do the email and the necessary communications to every driver to basically clarify and say to them, you are falling within that particular position. Tell us how you're going to be out of that position by your renewal date on whatever date it is on in 2027.
Thank you for that clarity. I think I'd have preferred to have seen the letter that goes out to the trade, not specifying a date, but indicating that the council's policy is this, and I'm asking to hear from the members of the trade what their proposals are, when their proposal is to be compliant. Because if you say, oh, by the way, it's not going to be effectively till the end of 2027, nobody's going to do anything until December 2027. We actually rather would like to try and get people to come forth and be compliant as early as they possibly can be without causing undue hardship. That's the point that I'm trying to make. In other words, my suggestion was an overlay, if you like, to the public consultation.
I mean, obviously, there's nothing to stop somebody renewing their vehicle and becoming legal or under policy whenever they're ready.
No, I'm not suggesting it would be. All I'm suggesting is that we need to know what people propose to do before we actually come along at our next meeting, our next full meeting where this is discussed, to make a final decision on the policy. That would then, I think that would be a good way of going about it.
I'll have to look at timeline, because obviously we've got to give them the 6-week consultation, identify the various parties that are involved. Well, it's quite easy to say who's not ULEZ compliant now and lay out what the suggestion is. But obviously it's not going to be a large group of vehicles at the end of November or December 2027. It's going to taper off anywhere from the 1st of January 2027 over the next 12 months. Because everybody who presents themselves must have a ULEZ compliant vehicle, whatever date it is in 2027. And if the majority are early in the year, then the majority be ready quicker. We will certainly ask the question of what are you going to do to be compliant? There's no issue with that. I'm just wondering I mean, obviously, the bottom line, other than saying you told us you were going to do it, is not a huge amount of sway, because whether they answer the question or not, on the day they come for licensing on the 20th, or whatever day it is in 2027, if they're not compliant, they're no longer got a taxi. It's almost, we can ask them, they could tell us whatever they want, but the bottom line is it will be very clear. It doesn't matter what sob story you trot out. It doesn't matter what, ins and outs and whatever. You've had plenty of time. You know what was coming, and you've not complied. Therefore, you are off the road. And that would be, it's not a discussion.
It's a go, no go, isn't it? So that'll be the end of it, and the guillotine will drop, so I accept that. Okay, satisfied with that? I think we've had a good debate on that, and we know where we're going with it, so thank you officers for that. Item 8, next on the agenda, is the Licensing Committee Work Programme. Mr Evans.
Chair, there's a couple of amendments and additions to the work programme. The first one obviously was for this evening's meeting, where the Hackney Carriage Policy Review was moved to January. And there are 2 other policy reviews added in, caravan policy and scrap metal, I think, which you'll see from the work programme, are Council's caravan policies proposed for March, and review of the scrap metal doodle policy is proposed for January. And other than that, those are the changes, if the committee's happy to approve those or make any suggestions. Thanks.
Councillors, do you approve? Councillor Powley.
Are we going to be adding the CCTV possible policy within that? In the cabs, could that be added sometime in the workload?
I think that's part of the taxi review that's being done now, I believe, so yes, it will come forward.
Thanks for that clarification.
Yeah, the whole policy is being reviewed from page 1 to page whatever it is. It just won't be as many pages as it was, because it will be more accurate and more streamlined. But that will certainly be an option, and we will be very interested in the views of my colleague over there at the far end and his organisation.
I'm happy to propose a workload.
Thank you very much, Councillor Brownlie. Seconder? Councillor Hagan, thank you very much. All in favour? Thank you very much. We've just agreed the work programme. I have no other items on the agenda, because there's no confidential on this, so we can now close the meeting. Thank you very much, councillors. If we stop the recording.